I'm Jilly G. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make my gluten-free rhubarb blueberry pie. And I think it's really funny. I came across a recipe the other day that was blueberry and rhubarb jam, and it was called Bluebarb. So I've started calling this pie my Bluebarb Pie. And this is my homegrown rhubarb. If you've never seen it before, it looks kind of like celery. It's reddish green. I know some varieties are more red and some varieties are more green. Mine's kind of a light red greenish. I just need 3 cups of cut up rhubarb. And then I've got 3 cups of blueberries that I've already washed and rinsed and drained, and they're in here. I do need to preheat my oven to 425. I've already got my pie crust made. It's in the fridge. So before we get started on everything else, I wanted to let you know that I've recently done a podcast interview with Allergy Dragon. I will put a link for her channel in my description box below. So check out her channel and then check out my interview and check out all of the other amazing people that she has interviewed. There's so much good, useful information. Whether you have celiac disease or many, many other food allergies, there is something for everybody on her channel. So what I want to do is cut up my rhubarb into bite-sized pieces. Some of my blueberries are pretty good size. And so, kind of a size that is close to one of these bigger blueberries. And if you don't like blueberries, I have a rhubarb strawberry pie here on my channel. I have a rhubarb upside down cake. That is delicious. I also have a rhubarb cheesecake bar recipe. Those are amazing. And maybe you've never had rhubarb. I think you should look for it at your grocery store, and I think you should try it. It really is delicious. It's one of those vegetables that is mostly seen in a fruit pie like this. But you can make jams, coming soon, by the way. I also have a rhubarb raisin cranberry relish here on my channel. It's kind of like a cranberry sauce, and it goes so great with ham or turkey, on a sandwich, on toast, whatever. And maybe you had rhubarb as a kid and you hated every minute of it. I encourage you to try it again. Try it in a dessert, something like this, or the rhubarb upside down cake. It really is delicious. I remember eating rhubarb as a kid at my grandma's house. I think I mentioned this in another video. My grandma would give us a stalk of rhubarb and give us a cup of sugar, and then we would dip it in and eat it. It's really sour and really tart. And then for a long time, I didn't like rhubarb. I thought it was terrible. I thought it tasted like dirt. And so I wouldn't eat it, but I would cook with it because my grandparents had a rhubarb plant. And so they would give me their rhubarb, and I would make all kinds of pies and things for my grandparents. One of the most popular ones was a rhubarb raisin pie. So if you don't like blueberries, or you don't want another fresh fruit like that in your pie, use raisins. And you know how I feel about raisins. So it was a double no for me. No rhubarb and no raisins. But then I was able to get a start of the rhubarb plant from my grandparents, which is where this rhubarb came from. And I decided that sometimes your tastes change after a while, and so I started giving it a try. And I've come to really, really enjoy it. I love to grow it, I love to cook with it, and I love to eat it. So I'm aiming for 3 cups of rhubarb to go with my 3 cups of blueberries. And we're just about there. And if you have to buy some at the store, and you end up with extra, it freezes really, really well. And it also goes in the freeze dryer really, really well. I've done that before too. Now for that matter, maybe you already have a stash of frozen rhubarb in your freezer. This recipe can absolutely be made with frozen blueberries and frozen rhubarb. The only recommendation is to thaw them and drain them really, really well. You don't want a soggy pie. And I think we'll go these 3 more stalks of rhubarb. And that looks like a little bit more than the 3 cups I was aiming for, but that's totally fine. One thing with any kind of fruit pie, they always cook down. And the pie dish I'm using today is a deep dish pie dish, and so I like it to be full enough that it won't sink and be kind of like a crater. And then I'm just going to toss together my rhubarb and my blueberries. Very carefully, we don't want to crush the blueberries. Once you've got those evenly mixed together, blueberries are kind of like cranberries. Once you start cooking them and they burst, they kind of have the gelatinous qualities that cranberries do. That's why cranberry sauce is what it is. They have the jelly-like innards, I guess. I don't even know what it is. Don't listen to me. These are not scientific terms here on this channel. So the rest of my ingredients, that is for later. I've got 1 cup of date sugar, and then I've got a ½ cup of my gluten-free flour. And then I've got 1 orange here that I want to zest, probably a tablespoon or so. You don't have to put orange in. You could put lemon or nothing at all. And I don't have any spices in here at all. I like just the fruit flavor. Well, I guess the orange zest is kind of the spice. And because I'm using date sugar today, it will have a little bit of the date sugar flavor. But there's a couple of reasons why I'm using date sugar. Of course, this recipe, it would be white sugar. I suppose you could use brown sugar if you wanted to. Sometimes rhubarb has a tendency to be really liquidy. And I've made a rhubarb strawberry pie before where if you don't have your flour ratio right with the fruit, you'll end up with a really soggy, liquidy pie. So date sugar is really dry and it absorbs a lot. And a lot of pie recipes call for mixing your fruit together with a flour sugar mixture and then letting it rest for a few minutes. And that helps kind of release any of the juices in the fruit. But this recipe doesn't call for that. So in order to make sure that my pie is not too liquidy, I decided to use date sugar today instead of honey. That way, the date sugar will absorb possibly any extra liquid that might be released from the rhubarb. But don't worry, even if your pie turns out to be a soupy mess, still is delicious. You just put it in a bowl with ice cream or whipped cream and you're good to go. So now I just want to mix together my date sugar, my orange zest, and my flour. Date sugar has a tendency to be kind of lumpy, so I like to use a spoon and then I can kind of mash out the lumps a little bit, although it doesn't really matter. And because I'm not using any spices today, you certainly can. You can add in some cinnamon, you could add in some nutmeg, whatever. My oven is preheated. Once you've got that all together, let's move all of this aside. So I made this pie crust this morning, and then I just put it in the fridge, and then here is the top crust that I put on my cookie sheet in the fridge as well. So foil lined cookie sheet. Anytime you make a fruit pie, you always want to have something under the pie dish. It will make the biggest mess in your oven. So this is just my basic gluten-free pie crust. It's the double crust recipe. It's in my cookbook. It's here on my channel. I have many recipes where I show you how to make this crust, and then I have one video specifically on how to make this. So I'm not showing you today. And then for a double crust recipe, when I use my deep dish pie dish, I don't evenly divide the dough. You're supposed to make the dough, divide it in half, and then half is for the top and half is for the bottom. When I'm using the deep dish pie dish, I usually go more than half. Usually, not quite 3/4 of the dough, but I really want to make sure I have a sturdy base. And then the rest of it is for the top. And then I've just rolled it out flat into a circle, and then I am going to cut it into strips. So now all we have to do is start putting in our fruit and our sugar mixture. And you don't have to layer it like I am. You could mix your sugar flour mixture in with all of your fruit, stir it all together, and then just dump it in your pie dish. But I'm going to layer it today. So just eyeball half of your blueberry rhubarb fruit mixture here. And then we're going to eyeball half of our sugar flour mixture. Sprinkle on top. And now the rest of our blueberries and our rhubarb. And then spread it out so it's mostly in an even layer. Sure looks pretty already. And now the rest of our date sugar and flour and orange zest. And I know I've said it so many times before, but I love date sugar with fruit pies like this. Date sugar goes so well with any kind of fruit. Now that all of that's on top of our fruit, I'm gonna move this aside and bring back my top pie crust. It still is really chilled, and I'm just gonna cut strips. Try to make them straight. Most of the time I like to make a lattice top. Then you can see what the filling looks like. I've got 2 tablespoons of cut up butter. And we're just gonna stick this in here evenly around our pie. Just kind of stick it in there. Oh, evenly around, not all in one spot. And in the same little cup that our butter was in, I've got some milk. And even the edges of my lattice topping here that aren't exactly perfect, these are actually perfect for the edge. And I know a traditional lattice is woven, but gluten-free pie crust is really hard to weave. But go ahead and try it if you want to. So we can kind of weave it by layering different directions as we go. And it's okay if it doesn't reach all the way to the edge either. And then just break off if it's too long. Move them around if you have to. And there we go. Not exactly woven together, but it still looks beautiful. And these couple of little extra pieces here, you can actually just squish together just like that. Here, let's turn this around so you can see. Just tuck it in there if it seems like it needs a little extra pie crust. There, nothing to it at all. You could do an egg wash or no wash at all. Milk works as a really great wash if you don't want to use an egg. And if you use sugar, you can sprinkle on some sugar and then it will stick to your milk wash and give a little extra sweetness to your crust. I'm not going to do that today. I thought about it with date sugar, but sometimes it has a tendency to get really dark in the oven, and I don't want my pie crust to look burnt. Unless it is burnt. But that's a different story. Now you might be wondering why I'm not sealing the edges with the pie crust. There's a couple of different reasons. For one, it doesn't really matter. The fruit juice might all bubble up anyways, and then it's going to cover all of the effort that you did. And I'm not sure if you can tell or not, but it is kind of domed in the middle. Again, fruit pies will always sink down when they cool off. So if you start out with a dome in the middle, it might puff up a little bit, and then it will sink once the fruit is cooked and it cools off, and then you don't have kind of a crater in there. But because it will sink, my edges will all meet together. I don't know if that makes any sense. Makes sense to me. We're going to cover the edges of the pie so they don't get burnt while the rest of the pie is cooking. And you want to be careful not to get your pie crust stuck on the side of the foil. Then when you take them off, sometimes if the pie is stuck on there, it will tear your crust. But if that happens, it's okay. Okay, that looks really good. So this will go into the oven for about 20 minutes. Then I'll turn it around so the back is in the front, and that just helps more even baking. And then it will probably go for another 20 minutes or so. 40 to 50 minutes is usually about the average for a fruit pie this size. But we'll see. And then, the last, maybe 10 to 15 minutes or so of baking, you can take off the foil and let the edges kind of get a little brown. Okay, it smells amazing. It's so surprising to me. The rhubarb smell is definitely coming through, but the blueberries, it smells like blueberries for sure. So I don't have any juices bubbling over. You know, one thing I've noticed with date sugar and pies, because the date sugar is so dry, it doesn't bubble over like I'm used to my fruit pies bubbling over. but it looks really good. It smells really good. So now we just wait. We just wait till this is cooled off enough that it will hold a slice. And fruit pies like this, you can always serve a fruit pie warm, but a lot of times it's really challenging to get a piece of pie out of a hot pie. So I like to let it cool off to at least room temperature, and then you can always reheat your piece of pie if you want. And we'll see how much it sinks down when it cools. So my blueberry rhubarb pie has been cooling for about 3 hours. It still is just barely warm on the bottom. So let's cut into it and see what we've got. And it wouldn't be gluten-free crust if it didn't fall apart a little bit. Now because it's still warm, I expect that it will be a little juicier than if it were cooled off completely. And then of course I'll put it in the fridge and then it will firm up even more. But let's see how well it will hold a slice. That's a really big piece for my spatula here. I'm going to cut a smaller one. Oh, maybe I didn't cut one small enough. Okay, let's see. It's going to fall apart already. I'm going to bring my plate closer. Oh boy. There it goes. Falling apart like crazy. Now, if this doesn't look delicious, I don't know what does. So I recommend if you make this pie, let it cool off completely before you cut into it. Now once I've got all of the pieces of my piece of pie onto my plate, it is actually holding a slice pretty well. It sure looks good. And I think the date sugar did what I wanted it to do. I think it helped absorb a lot of the juices that would have come from the rhubarb. And my blueberries are mostly whole. Now doesn't that look like an appetizing piece of pie? My goodness. You can serve it warm, but this is what it looks like. So if you wait until it cools off completely and then it's been in the fridge, it will definitely hold a slice. And in just this short time that I've been talking to you, it's not oozing out at all. So once it is cool completely, it will be a pretty solid piece of pie. And then I've got some whipped cream here. It actually looks like cobbler on my plate. But I don't mind. Okay. Take a bite here. It won't be hard to get a little bit of everything. It's already kind of a mess on the plate. That is really good. Fruit pies are never really that sweet. They're usually on the tart side. This pie is perfect. The date sugar adds just the right amount of sweet. The blueberries add such great blueberry flavor. And of course the rhubarb. So delicious. And you know, blueberries are my favorite. Although I say a lot of things are my favorite. But I really do love blueberries. And I don't ever associate them that they have a really strong flavor. In fact, sometimes when you pair them with things, you seem to lose the blueberry flavor a little bit. But in this pie with the rhubarb, they are coming through and the rhubarb is coming through. It really is the perfect combination of blueberries and rhubarb. And you don't notice how sweet blueberries are until you pair them with something that's really tart like rhubarb. Absolutely delicious. And you know, here's a piece of my crust that was on the bottom. Delicious. You don't have to serve this with whipped cream like I am. You could serve this with ice cream or nothing at all. It really is delicious. I'm just going to keep eating it. If you've made it this far into the video to see how my pie turned out, then I think you really should give this pie a try. Maybe you don't like rhubarb, or maybe you think that you don't like rhubarb. It really is delicious with the blueberries. Give it a try and let me know what you think. And just think, if you make this delicious pie for a dinner party and you serve it warm, this is what you'll present to your guests. But I don't care what it looks like. It is absolutely delicious. I've eaten that whole side of the pie. I gotta start working on this side over here. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions or comments, let me know, and I'll see you on the next one.